Let me check the message from Nani.
Okay, I'll just share things and we will start. So, anyway, we should be good boys and girls and we should first say hello, right? Hello. It's really important to say hello. So, how's everyone?
Hello, Anya. Good to see you again.
Yep, so we've got Emma and that's it, right?
Yeah, Nana will join us soon.
Good, one more.
Yeah, two more, I guess.
Morning, Anya.
Morning, everybody.
Good morning.
If I missed someone, I'm sorry. You have to, if you don't see someone's face on the screen,
Hmm.
that means that I didn't let them in. Sometimes I cannot see because of the screen size.
Yeah.
Okay, so sorry for little for being a little bit late. I got so engrossed in what we're gonna do today that time flew. Okay, so so when you teach workshops like this, you always want to do your best and you always complicate things,
Yeah.
always, because like it's very hard to translate in one sentence 10 years of your work.
Mm.
So why am I saying this? I can't remember now. So the the first week last week, we had a week before probably, but last week we just we were exposed to a number of concepts, and it may have been easier or harder for some of us and so on. um, we don't know. So now we will be ironing out things, right? So this week we are ironing out things, and next week we won't be ironing anything because I will be busy in Asia. So we have to wait for the next workshop until December. Is it all right, Lala?
Yes, Anya, that's perfect.
Okay, I can't make it on the 25th. I'll be giving a keynote probably somewhere in the universe. Okay, so um, so we were throwing some concepts around last week, and some of us understood a little bit, some of us understood some other bits, and some of us maybe not at all. We've got one more person, I think. Right, beautiful. We're growing in numbers. I hope I have got everybody in. So when you participate in workshops like this, and there will be a sequence, I don't know about other people. I am not here to give you a mold and beat you up for the next 2 years to follow me religiously. Okay? What I would like what I would like for these workshops um, to achieve is to teach you a little bit independent thinking. Because you will learn that once you develop something, or even once you follow someone else's method, what's interesting is that when you develop your own thoughts about that method, you can ask questions about it. And I had students, I'm not sure how it was with Lala because it was a long time ago, but with Lukman Behagi from Borneo, he asked me questions. And I thought, how on earth could anyone ask a question like this? But I couldn't answer it. You see? So my relationship with my students or colleagues is always based on the more we think, the more we understand the model. Um, so, for example, just to give you an example, someone 200 years ago or 100 years ago, probably 200 years ago, invented electricity, but only now we understand how much what it meant. We have computers, we have satellites, right? The person who invented electricity had no idea that this will lead to some other technological invention. Sometimes when you invent things, you mean this is just a little thing because you don't understand your own invention. So, with regard to this, I would like to ask you first. Did you have any questions? Did you have any thoughts over the last week that I could just note down and hope to respond to or hope to have a discussion about?
Pak Lala, Ania,
Yep.
Yes, please, Panana. Yes,
yeah,
please.
yeah. Okay, thank you very much, Pak Lala and Ania. What I'm still wondering about the steps or the generic structures of last meeting we talked in Indonesia. Sometimes that in teaching text, uh, teachers provide such kind of the generic structures of the text with the features. So, I mean, can you give me the insights of how the generic structures of the text that we talk about, does it have any specific features in order to that teachers or students can analyze, okay, this case of the focus, this is the disturbance, and so on. Do you have any
Okay, so
kind of
we will address that. So our method is a little bit different because imagine you have students, and say you are very lucky in the in an academic context where you only deal with one genre, which is academic writing, right? But you are preparing students for schools, and in schools there is what, 6 genres that they teach?
more than
You know, like
six,
the
seven?
narrative,
More than that.
anecdote, story, I don't know, whatever else is there. Right. So I call it encyclopedic entry, but they have a different word for it. The point is, I'm an academic. I've been at it for so long, and I still can't remember all these genres and all these features, right? So, what do you want to do to a 10-year-old? Do you want the 10-year-old to be able to imagine, be creative and critical and inspiring, or do you want them just to recite linguistic rules?
And,
You see, so this is the sort of question that we ask ourselves. I'm not saying that, okay, so that's the question with which we may start. And then we will ask ourselves, so if we don't want them to be just reciting grammar rules, how can we have an alternative? Now, we all come out, I mean, me too, trust me, from a system which was based on memorize and repeat. And we got relatively good at it, but we didn't just get relatively good at it to succeed in the system. We actually believe that that's how it must be. And it's very hard to throw it away. It would be like telling you your mother is not your mother. Looks like you, has your DNA, fed you, loves you, it's not your mother. So so that's a shift. Now, you all had access to my latest paper that I have written. Whether it will get published, I have no idea. It is literally left of field. It's completely different. I would like to see the faces of the reviewers who will read that paper. They will look at it and they would say, heresy, heresy. Right? Where are the features? Where are the names of genres? Right? That would be the reaction of reviewers that have limited reading in linguistics or in semiotics, because I didn't just invent the method. I actually draw on very serious academics. Unfortunately, the genre school of linguistics doesn't draw on very serious linguists. I'm very sorry to tell you that. It draws on one person. You know, that person created the universe. It's like God. But there were, I mean, when Halliday was writing his works, there were people at University of Queensland and University of Sydney, which means next door to Halliday, or in fact the same door, who were questioning the approach to genre the approach to text by Halliday. And why were they ignored? I will tell you why they were ignored. Because 3 people questioned who are world famous, but Halliday was surrounded by 300 people in the School of Melbourne and in the School of Sydney, School of Linguistics, and it's just sheer numbers. Sheer numbers. The harder you scream, the more publications you publish, then your paradigm becomes more I don't know, accepted. But people were writing smart things. And people who were the linguists in Sydney and the linguists in Melbourne hardly read anybody in French, hardly read anybody who was writing on semiotics or the study of meaning and study of text in Europe. And by sheer ignorance, those schools disappeared. Now I'm talking about emotions. I didn't invent the role of emotions in memory and in cognition. It's not my finding. I'm not a neuroscientist. If you read my paper, there are seminal authors and biggest researchers of neuroscience who are talking about the concept of emotion in cognition. I only took their evidence. I stole, I integrated their evidence, right? I didn't invent it. So there's a lot happening outside of Halliday. Now, Halliday wrote in the 70s. That's like 50 years ago, right? And these findings from neuroscience, as I say, for example, 20 years old. So we've had 2 decades to invent something. So it's really a bit of a shame that Australia, which sees itself at the cutting edge of teaching of literacy pedagogy and also of text pedagogy, doesn't look outside of its own model of linguistics to integrate new evidence. And it doesn't, because there's 300 of them doing the same thing for so many decades. They own the paradigm. So the alternative to the concept of we have a concept, right? We either create students who are linguists, or we create students who are capable, critical and creative writers. And I'm saying these 2 don't actually marry together, and they know it too. In Melbourne, they've written text where they actually say it. They know that. But they believe that you become creative maybe later on. When we strip you from all your capacities, from all your confidence, self-confidence, we strip you from all of this. We tell you these are the linguistics rules you must study. And then one day, maybe when you're 25, you can become creative. I just, it's a nonsense talk. And yet it is created by, what's her name? Frances Christie, right, from Melbourne, Surrey. But that's what she wrote in her paper in 2013. One day they will be playful and creative. Well, when is this day to come? And on what basis is she saying that? Okay, so we had that. So we will look into that. Okay, Nana said, so, oh, good. We will look at that, except that we will not look at those features, which is like chosen by whom? By Halliday? By Chomsky? By, I don't know, Hofstadter, who looks at analogy? By whom? Which bits of the text we will now crown and say, the more you use of that, the better for you. I mean, I had that problem with Lala. Lala is a product of systemic functional linguistics. I couldn't read his text. It had so many adjectives and adverbs that it was driving me crazy. It was so ornamented, his text. It was like flowery, and I'm trying to read an academic text where I want some facts and seeing sort of how he works with facts. And everything was amazing, and everything was, I don't know, revolutionary, and everything was just, and these statements are actually not very good. Not only that the flowery language like this is not quite academic text, but also is dangerous in academic texts because you make a lot of assumptions by putting all these adverbs and adjectives. But he was taught to have these features. So that's a good question, and I want you to keep it in mind, okay, Nana, because at the end of the today's sessions or the next week's session, I don't know, whenever you're ready, we will assess whether we have those features, right? Because that's important. It's important to be able to actually tell what we're dealing with. So we will see whether we have maybe not the features you expect, but whether we have anything that is useful for students and for ourselves when we read and write. Now, I will be taking you through some steps today, and obviously some things I'll forget today because that's how it is. So if you have a question in the middle of that sequence of the workshop today, could you please interrupt me and just ask questions and whatever? If I can answer it, I will. If I can't, I will just put it in writing for myself. I'll note it down to address it another day. So we have the features, and what else would we have? Anyone else has other comments?
But also,
No,
please.
not yet. No, I haven't got any questions.
So look, I would, some of the things you could ask questions about. I've shared with you some things from ChatGPT, and clearly, I just sort of showed you what I was doing with ChatGPT because I didn't have enough time last week to tell you of the relevance of that. But when you get these notes from Lala, have a look at them. Ask yourselves questions. This is not a workshop in order to give you a mathematical rule for you to follow for the rest of your life, which will absolve you from any thinking. Now you're following just a different linguist, right? So all you do in your academic life is to find the linguist to follow, and you just blindly follow, because when you blindly follow, you can actually trip over and fall really hard. So the point here is for us to actually review some notes, ask ourselves, why would I do that with Google, with ChatGPT? It's totally, Anya, you will explain it to us. I look forward to it, but to tell you the truth, I can't see the point of it. Or you explore it and that the notes from Lala, and you say to yourself, I have no idea why she did that, but I'm teaching a class tomorrow, and I might not do what she's doing, but I'll do something similar. Yeah, that's the idea. It's not like a recipe, what I'm doing, that if you put one more egg, the cake will flop, something will go wrong. This is like, playing with things and see how this play will add to the concepts that we're actually trying to, well, I don't want to use the word learn, but share and discuss. So by all means, whatever I send to Lala, look at it, see whether there's any value of it, not necessarily as a method for your classroom, but as something that inspires you to do something else. But, so completely different, but inspired by those notes. I've done it many times. Someone said A, and I said D. But if the A was not said, I would not be able to produce D. You see what I'm saying? That's just somehow like this. Okay, so we might just go to this. So remember, if you hover your mouse on the green frame of the screen, and if you put it into the right corner, a little square will appear. And if you press on that square, then the screen will be as large as, the PowerPoint will be as large as the screen of your computer. So that would be helpful for you. Okay, so I'll just take you. So remember, the reason why I'm going to run you through those questions again is simply because Why? Why would I do that to you? I'll do this to you so that you remind yourself what I think actually ChatGPT can do, and at the same time, I would like you to ask yourself, would you like? I mean, you would like a system like this, something that helps, a system with which I can interact, that I can ask questions of, that can edit my text, right? I would like something that will also translate from Indonesian to English, English to Indonesian. I'd love that for myself, but not for my students. That's very often, right? It happens. Oh my God, if I give them a perfect system that I want, I would die to have a system like this, but I'm not going to give it to the students. Right? It's tricky. You mean you want it, but the students should, if they have it too, what? They will not have a need for you? Oh my goodness, how am I assess them when they start producing perfect text? That's a good question. Come up with an answer. Right? So it's very tricky. We have a system that can analyze for us text, that can create text, that can edit, that can talk to us, that can explain us grammar rules, that can explain to us whatever we ask it of. Right? Can do anything, can talk to us, can generate text for us, can do all kind, can talk to us in English. Right? So there's a speaking feature in ChatGPT. All kinds of things. So they creates pictures, creates all kinds of things. So I want it. But my kids know they will have a textbook, and today we're on page 1 and doing the 3 lines here. Now, I could be nasty and say and ask you, what's the guarantee that if your students do chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3 of the textbook, that by the time they do chapter 10, they will speak English at the higher level of proficiency? And you'd say, no guarantee. And I'll say, yeah, so why do it? Maybe it's not the proficiency we're after. Maybe something else. Like, will they like studying a foreign language better after doing chapter 10? Will they see the reason for studying English after chapter 10? Will the study of English change their lives after they've gotten to chapter 10? These are the higher order educational values or goals. Right? So you can see, I mean, in Australia, we have them, we call them general capabilities in all these curricular guidelines, the 21st century skills in Indonesian curriculum, you also have them identified, So, the question is how will your students change when they get to chapter 10? So we've done chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3 of the textbook. We are in chapter 10. How are the lives of our students now changed in terms of these higher order competencies? It'd be hard to write an essay on that, right? And very important to do so. Okay, so I want an editor that does this, but I don't want my students to have access to it. So this is a question that you can take home and think for yourselves. And it's again one of those moments where you say, Anya is saying heresy. Sure. But I am saying heresy, but I can guarantee you that within 5 years, everybody will be saying the same thing. In Australia, everybody is aware of it. So even if we're not teaching the way we would like to, we're aware of the shortcomings. Okay, so that's a nasty question to ask, but I did ask. So we will see how to work with this. So we were talking about emotions, and I presume that all of you have read my recent article, and you've read about that that section on emotion. Why am I focusing on emotion? So there is no such a thing as cognition without emotion. If there is, that's only when a person has some kind of mental disability. usually psychopathy, or not psychopathy, then something else, like some sort of short circuits happen in the brain where connections were broken. And there is this research by Helen Imordino Young that with Antonio Damasio. We're talking like, key figures in neuroscience that have shown that if your if your cognition is not linked to emotions, then some links were severed, and as a result, you're not fully functioning human being, right? And you cannot make decisions that serve you well. You can create convincing text, but at the end of the day, you are not able to assess the relevance of your conclusions, and also your connections are actually not as well working as you would want to convince others that they are. So that's the sort of connection with emotions. Also, if you can personalize this argument, just think of yourself, of your earliest memories when you were little. So when you were little, right, think of your earliest memories. And I cannot ask 10 of you at the same time what these memories were, but I'll tell you mine, and maybe you can relate. My earliest memory is before I started walking. And you know why? Because when my mother came to the early childhood center where I was kept, every time she would come to pick me up, she would bring something for me. And I remember the whole thing. I remember what I was wearing. I remember everything, how the room looked, everything. I remember even the bag in which my mother brought something for me. But the reason why I remember it is emotional. She brought for me biscuits, not lollies. And I hated biscuits. Hated. I was so disappointed in that gift that I remember that became my earliest memory that I consciously remember. I remember what I was wearing, how I was, where the bag was on my right, how the bag looked like, everything. I don't remember my mother's face because it was irrelevant. I remember which biscuits, how they looked like. So you can see that thinking and memory and cognitions are connected. The emotion is the thing that makes makes things stick. Right? It's the glue, if you like. All right. So now we've finished more or less this long introduction. And what does it mean to understand the text? It's a very interesting. We in Australia have those NAPLAN tests, which is like those. I'm sure you have them to PISA or something. We have these tests that we put students through, little kids, and we give them a text, and we tell and we ask a student comprehension questions, right? So if I were to ask you, did you understand the text about the football game? Did you understand it? Yeah. Yeah, by now you doubt whether you exist. I know that. But doesn't matter. You can assert your own confidence here. So, did you understand the text about the football game? Yeah.
We did.
What was the text about?
Well, I know when I after I read the football text, well, I can imagine what the protagonist or the narrator and also his or her friends felt about. They had difficulties, they had struggles, they need to face in order to enjoy the match. So I
But
just picture.
But the text was not about that. You see what I'm saying? You see what I'm saying? I'll just show you a point that I made. this is after several slides I wanted to take you through, but I think we'll jump a few just for a second. So we're taught at school that the text was about the protagonist. She and her friend went to the football game, and so it starts. We talk about text as if as if we were 6 years old. It was the protagonist, and I felt sorry for the for the protagonist and her girlfriend. They had to endure so much, but they went to the game. It was raining. It was chaotic, but they survived. All that. Now you need to understand you need to ask yourself, why do people write text? And just look at that here at this on the slide I've written. Texts are not written to record narrators' experiences. They are never written to record narrators. But do you know why? Because which experiences? How does the narrator choose which experiences to actually put on paper? She doesn't say that she's overwritten. I'm talking about myself because yesterday I was eating so much mango. Like I had like about 15 mangoes yesterday. So she's not writing that she went to the game. She felt acidity from mangoes. Mangoes are coming up here. It's raining and I'm feeling mangoes up to here. I'm looking for some water because to counter the sweetness of the mangoes. She's not saying that. She's not telling us anything about her stomach. She's not telling us at the same time about the thinking of her husband. We're not even sure that she's married. So when someone writes a text, it's not to record some experiences, but someone writes the text and in the process they consciously select the experiences they will put on paper for you to read. There's a decision. So the text was not about football game. The text was not about the rain. The text was not about the chaos that unfolded. Right? And that's very important. So to understand a text, it doesn't mean to understand vocabulary and grammar. It's very different, right? Because in Australia, we too, if it was if we look at the at the literacy test in Australia, say for 7-year-olds or seventh grade, so 13-year-old, for a 13-year-old, this text would be accompanied by the following questions. Who went to the football game? Why did they go to the football game? Was it a nice experience? What happened at the football game? Literally treating a student as if they were cognitively impaired and couldn't tell that someone went to the football game to have fun. But that's not a comprehension of the text, it's comprehension of vocabulary. The text was not written for that. No text is written. So why do people write text? If I write a text, I want to manipulate you, not in the bad word, not in the bad meaning of the word. I want to affect you. I want you to come out with a specific meaning in your head. So I'm not writing everything. I'm writing I choose what to write and how to write it for you to understand, not to understand how I feel, but to be affected, right? So sometimes Um, Sometimes the text really manipulate the reader badly, right? And sometimes it is as simple as just you can relate to the protagonist's experiences, right? But to
Yeah.
relate, so that you can relate to my experiences, I have to communicate these experiences in a way that you feel affected, like I was affected. Because if I told you, well, we went to the football game, it was all good, a bit chaotic, right?
I see.
It's a
Yeah.
different report, right? You don't feel, there's not enough detail. Now, I'm just jumping a little bit before I take you systematically. I'll go here first. So the text could have been written like, I love football game. Sometimes, you just have to travel to the game. It's a little bit hard, but I love the game. I went to the game, we won, and I really, really enjoy the game. So it's a completely different selection of experiences that I want to pass on to you than if I use a complex structure like this. So the text was complex. So first of all, we agree that whatever that particular story was about, it had a complex structure. So one skill we have learned last week and we are reinforcing today is that sometimes to communicate a message, we will utilize a complex structure in order to reinforce a particular experience so that you get the message that I want to communicate. So we agreed that the narrative was not about football game. We I indicated to you briefly, we haven't actually done enough of exercises yet to get practical experience at it, but nonetheless, we've used emotions to look into the structure of the text, right? And what the disturbance is, that negative feeling, right? That negative feeling, that is the problem that generates the whole text, right? So, we were all enthusiastic to go somewhere to have a positive experience, and bang, it rained. It wasn't just freezing, it also rained, right? So first you sort of floating with the girls. Oh, we're eager, we're enthusiastic, we love the game, we're gonna go and support our team. So you're sort of high with the students as you read, and then they drop you down and they say, well, it's freezing and it's raining. Right. So we don't have to call it emotional analysis. No, we don't. We can just say, well, it's a problem. Yes. But in order to see what the text was really communicating without emotion, we can't tell. Did the text want you to feel enthusiastic for the girls? Did the text want to um, uh, make you feel for the girls? Did the text want you to have a adopt a particular perspective on the girls, right? Like they are this or they are that. The text certainly wanted you to think of the football game as total chaos, right? Because it was total chaos, right? So, and you can only, and the text uses devices to create that not understanding, but the feeling about the game, the feeling about what it means to be loyal to the team. So we could just look at this structure of this particular narrative in a more structural way rather than emotional way. But I think that that structural, yes, but emotions will help us to detect where the disturbance happens. Dialogue, how the person felt about the disturbance. Then the development tells us what happened next, and then allows us how to reflect on in which direction emotionally is the text taking us, right? So now, not only you have identified that the text has a complex structure, but within each of those segments, you can evaluate not what the text is saying, but what the text is doing to you emotionally. Now, Lala last week asked, what about two people have different views? Then you can ask your students, what makes you think this way? So we will do it today a little bit. So the student will go to the text and will point. And another student will say, well, I don't see it the same way. Good. Now go to other experiences, other texts, on the basis of which you make these judgments. And it's called explorative reading. So you don't read the text just like that. You read in relation to other experiences and other texts to back up your views. Now, this could be new to you. It's not new. It's not new in language teaching. It's not new to anything. When you write a master thesis or PhD, you do literature review. You cannot say, I invented holiday. No, you didn't invent holiday. Holiday invented himself, and other people wrote about holidays. So you draw on other texts to make your own point, right? The same here. If two students say, well, this doesn't make me feel supportive of the girls, you say, why not? You look at the text devices, how the text is manipulating you to feel supportive. Another person says, no, I think it makes me feel something else. Okay, where did you get that feeling from? Can you show other texts? Can you show other experiences where these devices were used? We can talk. As you talk and as you explore your experiences, what happens to you? You become what? You make experiences and your knowledge explicit to yourself. So you become increasingly more aware of yourself in relation to the world. Oh, in the world they do it like this, and I interpreted it like this. What about you? What about you? What about you? Oh, I saw this in the world, and I interpreted it as such. We can have a discussion. It's transforming. It's transforming. Okay. So let us run a little bit in some. How can we tell what makes us understand a text one way? So can we just before I actually take you through the analysis, can we just close the question? So what was the football game text about? So it wasn't about the football game. It wasn't about girls going on the train to the football game. Because when you actually want to answer the question what the text was about, you have to see what the text was trying to make you feel. What was the author trying to communicate and make you see? You always have to remember, nobody is stupid. Nobody just takes the pen and writes. Only a monkey does it. A monkey does blah. When a person takes a pen and writes, there's 3 million of decision processes happening in their brain in relation to the reader. Remember, I'm not sure if it's stated. Hello, everyone who is actually watching us online now. We have some people who switched on YouTube. When the person is writing a text, that person makes decision and also knows that it's writing a text for the text to be read. So they have you on their mind. When you write your doctoral thesis or master thesis, right? What is your supervisor telling you? You're not writing it to yourself. It's not your diary. You must write it and envisage a person who will read it. right? So when I was a master's student, my mistake, not necessarily when I was writing masters in German, I speak several languages. So my first honors thesis was in German, so that was fine. I had no problems. But when I moved into English, yeah, so my supervisor had to tell me, imagine that the person who will read it doesn't know what's in your head, doesn't know which articles you read and how you interpret. You've got to explain. It's called unpacking. Explain. So you always have an audience. So when a person writes a text, it writes a text for someone, not for, right? Even if that for someone is themselves, it is always in order to evoke a particular affective response, affective emotional response. I like these people. I don't like these people. I liked what she did. I don't like what she did. I feel sorry for this person. I will never do it because I don't want the same to happen to me. Something like that, right? In academic papers, I feel clarity when I see things written this way. It's clear. I feel clear. I feel clarity. I feel that, right? So these are emotional responses. I'm okay with it. I'm completely confused with it. It's just chaos. I will never write like this. I'm learning from this academic paper. I will never write like this. This is chaos, right? So people have emotional responses, not just to narratives like we have here, but also to scientific and any other academic papers. Even though we think that emotion is taken away from those papers, it isn't. Okay, the very fact that the entire Australian system follows Halliday blindly goes to show you that these texts are so emotionally manipulative that don't leave a gap for anything else. It is just so clear that there's only Halliday. There's only Halliday. Okay. So if the football game text was not about the football game, what was it about?
It was about maybe the emotions that the narrator felt at that time.
The writer doesn't check on what she wanted just to record her own emotions.
Maybe the writers want the readers to experience the journey, the emotions that he went through, maybe because
right, but why those?
Whenever I read a story or a novel, I enjoy the journey, the experience that the protagonist or the narrator went through. Yes, because the carefully selected words or structures, and I feel affected by that words.
Sure. So what happens is I write the text and you are like a leaf. I carry you on the stream of my words and I get you where I want you to be. And you are totally unaware how you end up in a hole. Because I do that. I used to read behaviorists. I read Watson, Skinner. I read their books and I could die for their methodology. It was so clear. Right. So I understand that, but that's what it is. When meaning is in words, then we just go with it and we're just happy that we understood English. So let me refresh your memories today. So so how can we tell what made us understand a text one way or another? It's those features. We will come back to those features, right? How can we tell what made us understand a text one way, not another? It's those devices, it's those features. So Nana, we will look into this, right? What do we do when we do not agree? So I'm not sure whether you recall, but we have those exploratory discussions, but not So we will look into the text, what was in the text that made us interpret it in particular way. And then we have a discussion, where did we see these devices in other texts, so that we can back up our interpretation, right? A stupid person says, it is about this. And someone says, I think it's about that. And we just leave it. Now, when you don't confront, nothing is born. And what you want from the class is people to confront their experiences, so that new things emerge, richer things. And that's why that discussion is important. So let us have a look what I have here. So we will look into this. So basically every text is written around a particular negative, I think it's always negative, that disturbance, that feeling, right? Because it is about to address it. So I think it's always negative. So here, what was the negative? We will have a look. What was the negative in the narrative? What was the negative experience around which the text revolved, right? So the football game narrative revolved around a particular disturbance, a particular problem, right? Like any other text. All texts are written in order to bring clarity to that problem. Because otherwise, why to open your mouth? If everything is clear, you don't open your mouth. You're not discussing the wall behind you now, because it's not a problem. But as soon as if you had a mouse or insect walking there, you would be talking about that wall. Right? I mean, if I saw now something walking across my carpet, I would get up and talk about that. But I know everything is in peace in my place, so I don't talk about it. There's no problem. There's no need to open my mouth. So texts are always revolving around the problem. That's very important. Now, what happens when the authors don't know it? We will look into students' texts today, just one or two, and we will say what it means. So I suggested to you, some texts might follow this structure straight away, like the end and the grasshopper story, right? It was just straight up and down this particular. But I don't want you to think about the structure as the structure of text. These are elements, and authors play with those elements. Now, obviously, one play is this, right? So notice that the text has a focus, then the key disturbance, then dialogue is the perspective on the problem, it's the perspective on the disturbance. It's not people talking. It's your perspective on the problem. We will look into it today. Then what happened, right? So what happened is the development, and then the next disturbance, and the next disturbance, and the next disturbance, until the resolution emerges, and then the moral of the story. Every text has a moral. So the linguist will tell you that only fables have a moral. So in terms of their little organization or understanding or classification of text, yes. But pedagogically speaking, not linguistically speaking, pedagogically speaking, each text has a takeaway message or take-home message. A take-home message in your PhD, what is it? It's called recommendations. Where to from here? Right? You can think of that as recommendations. You can think of it as where to from here. But in reality is, what's the moral of the whole research? It's best to follow up this. It's best to do things this way. It's best to explore things maybe in an alternative way. So that's the moral. Resolution is the findings. So what did we learn? Right? So it's very simple. That actually structure I took a little bit from emotions, and also I took from a PhD thesis. Focus is your introduction, disturbance is the problem that you want to address, dialogue is your literature review. What the heck can you tell me about the problem that you want to address? Development is, so what the heck will you do? Right, resolution is the findings, and the moral is where to from here. If a thesis has this structure, why would a poem or a cooking recipe not have the same structure. We're dealing with the same human brain. So linguistically speaking, what I'm saying is incorrect, because linguists have their own little paradigms for classifying text. But we do not want our students to be linguists. We want them to be creative, critical users of texts. So I call this particular approach, which we are discussing today, this is a pedagogic approach to texts, right? So that rather than having so many systems, so many features, so many different names, we just have we have a structure in relation to which we will compare and contrast how people do things. So the features will emerge, Nana, from the discussion about how people did that, not from a top-down classification by a linguist. Because top-down is given to you by general. You must know this. You must remember this. This is 25 rules of text production, and I want you to see them all memorized by tomorrow. Right? What we have is points of, I call it points of focus. So we have this single structure, and it will give us points of focus to discuss how authors worked when we worked with this structure. Okay, so how is this structure showing itself in the text? And we will discuss how do we know that, what devices did the text use that made us think this way, what is in that text, and so on. So we will do a little bit of that. So we talked about the self-awareness and social awareness. Transformative means expanding the perspective you have on yourself in the world, right? So it's not, I think this text was about revenge. Maybe. But you need to discuss it with someone else in relation to this text and other text so that your conclusion is informed. So that your self-awareness grows in relation to social awareness, not psychotic thing in relation to yourself. I think the world likes this, I think like this, and I think like that, and I think like that. And who are you to think? Sometimes you have to listen, right? And reflect. So listening alone is no good, and ignoring everybody is also no good, right? It has to be this sort of reciprocity. All right. So what we found out, it was how lovely this doctoral thesis structure or this generic structure of text, how lovely it was showing itself in this football game narrative. Now in red, sorry, because sometimes I do things with shortcuts. This should be an emotion of the emotion that the writer wanted you to feel, and in green is what I felt reading. So if, say, for example, in the beginning it starts with enthusiasm. We love this Magpies or whatever it is, some sort of football team. We love them. We're eager to go. We've got all their clothes on, blah, blah, blah. So they're enthusiastic, loyal, supportive, all of these sort of, this is what the author is sending to me. Right? Right? That's what the text was saying. I love the Magpies. I have their gowns on. I'm eager to go and see the game. We're ready to go. So this was so, pardon me. So I should make it red. And that's great. So this is what the narrator was saying. But it's not necessarily what you were feeling. Right? So sometimes, I don't know whether you're on social media, but sometimes on Facebook you can read what the person is saying. For example, I saw something today on Facebook. So the author thought it something was funny, so they presented to you the child doing something with the dog, and clearly the person who created that video thought it was funny. But if you read the comments, which is how people responded, it's not necessarily the way how the narrator or the creator of the video probably intended. Right? So it's one thing what the text is saying, the other thing is how you respond to the text. Now, that distinction is often not taught. This is uncritical reading, and the green is critical reading. Critical reading meaning, oh yeah, you've convinced me. I feel sympathy for you. I feel, sympathy in a sense that, yes, I understand that someone can be involved so much with some sports team to be ready to see them play live in a context like a big stadium where you can't see anybody. As I said last week, I went when I was 10 or something to a game. My brother took me. I never saw anything. We were so far behind, so far away from the stadium, right somewhere on the top. But it's about the atmosphere. So I feel sympathy to it. Yeah, I get it. I get it. So I understand. So I didn't necessarily feel the enthusiasm. Football, it's as important to me as a fire truck. Any of you who have little boys, fire truck is the meaning of life, right? Fire truck is as important to me as a football game. So I can't say that I was shaking out of enthusiasm as well. I just felt sympathy for the guy. Yeah, I get it. Yeah, someone can like it. Now, we will not be looking into the text at this very second. We will look next. So this is just a distinction. So rain happened. So that was the challenge, right? So she was communicating the challenge, right? It's freezing and it's raining. And I felt for her. Yeah, it's convincing me. I feel for you. So it's what the author is saying. The words and grammar are saying it's difficult. I look at the words and grammar. I know what she is saying, but on the basis of my experience, I do not see anything treacherous in this text. I think, yeah, I feel empathy. I connect with you. I'm connected with you. I connect with the fact that you can be so supportive of someone that you will go through all of that. Someone may not feel this way, right? So based on their likings and whatever, they may feel something else, right? So there will be a different emotion, resentment. I think that and nobody's saying should be going in the weather like this. There'll be always a moralistic person. If it is so cold and raining, you can get flu, and then you will be the cost to the government. All right. So we have disturbance here. So I'm not going to go through every emotion. So they felt annoyed and helpless, like they sighed, right? They sighed. They sat down and sighed. And the reason they sighed is because, oh my God, it's going to be a long day, right? So I'm just not going to comment on every emotion for each stage. I just wanted to point out the yellow bits. The text began with what? Enthusiasm countered with a challenge. Yeah, but it's gonna be difficult. Yeah, but it's gonna be difficult. And the difficulty continues throughout the text like a theme. What was the story about? Why did the author write this text? To communicate what? to communicate the moral. I don't know how hard it is. It was about endurance. It's about persistence, teaching someone about resilience, right? Not everything that is worthwhile comes to us without a challenge. That's what she is communicating. That's why she is continuously about the challenge. Jesus, it's cold. It's raining. Sorry for Jesus. In Australia, it's Jesus. At least in Poland, it's Jesus. Right. So, bloody hell, it's raining. It's cold. It's raining again. It's hailing. The guy who, the seats. Oh my God, there's no seats under the shelter. It's all open. The guy who is selling or allocating us the seats is horrible. Everything was bad, right? So continuously we have that tension: enthusiasm versus challenge, enthusiasm versus challenge, right? So the story really was about persistence paying off, right? Not everything that is worthwhile comes to us without challenge, right? Not everything. And I think that's the point of the story. That's the point of the story. And did the person, did the narrator achieve this? Well, certainly the author wrote about these difficulties, right? So the difficulties coming through. It's coming through over and over and over, pounding your head with it. They could have said it only once that it rained, but you would forget. It's raining. It's raining. It's raining. It's raining. So you can't forget. So with this theme being this recurring theme, the author is actually trying to evoke in you the emotion of how hard it was. How hard it was. It was very hard to stay enthusiastic. It was very hard to put up with all of that. You don't remember? It was very hard. Look at this. It started hailing. Oh, it was very hard. You didn't see it. We had to buy a raincoat. Oh, even the guy who was allocating seats was awful. Everything was awful other than their experience of the game itself. So you can see that when we talk about the text, we can talk about how the story unraveled. So they prepared for the game, they encountered difficulties and so on. But the text was never about the game. It was about the moral, which is nothing, not everything that is worthwhile comes to us without challenge. And the purpose of it and the emotional analysis of they want to make us feel empathy. They want us to make us feel concerned. They wanted to make us feel sorry for the girls. Even the seats were difficult. The crowd was unpleasant, was rowdy and whatever. The hail only intensified the unpleasant feeling of the rain, right? So they did everything they could to make us experience the challenge of surviving the game as fans, not as players, but as fans, as followers. So so they express all this rain and challenge and difficulty with finding the good seats and so on, but it's all in order for us to feel empathy, to feel concerned, to feel that situation is unpleasant, to feel compassion. Finally, when the rain stopped at some stage, we might have even felt a temporary relief, but it was very short, because then more rain happened, right? So we are really admiring the girls, right? Oh my God, how long can you put up with it? So this is what when the author says and more rain happened, it wasn't about the rain. They wanted us to admire their persistence. More rain happened. the author is not going to say, "Can you admire me for my persistence, please?" That's what my child would say to me. "Mommy, do you think I was brave?" Yeah, but the writer of the narrative is not going to say that. The writer will say, "And more rain happened. You thought it stopped, only for a second, came back." Why did they use this device? To make me feel admiration for their resilience. That was the reason why more rain didn't happen because it happened. It happened so that I feel respect for for their resilience, right? So more rain happened to evoke in me the emotion of admiration, right? So more rain happened to evoke in me the emotion of admiration. Right. And so much of it happened so that I finally get the point that sometimes life brings challenges. But if you look at the resolution, they were very happy. The team won, and they felt satisfied that they put up with the whole experience. Overall, it was great. They went home, they took a shower, right? All of this was just, oh, it was a great day, right? So the resolution tells us that despite of that, of so many challenges, it was a good day. It was a good day. All happened good. So we have this tension. It was a good day, but admire my resilience. Admire my resilience. Admire my resilience again, right? So it's just a recurring theme. So really, as the moral says, the story was really about persistence paying off. That's what it was about. That's why the author wrote the story. The story was worth telling. I want to take you also through a more detailed analysis of the text, but before I do that, I might show you some text from national tests that students wrote. And I want to show you what happens when students get things wrong. So this text, I wrote it down myself because this text, this is written as a student wrote, and it has mistakes. And I don't want these mistakes to stay in your brain. So I rewrote it. Okay, because sometimes a bad spelling, once you see it, you can forget it, right? So I just rewrote it. Okay, so here's the text. I want you, as you read it with me, I want you to tell me, because I think something went wrong with it, right? The person who assessed this text also felt that something went wrong with it. However, so I feel there's something wrong with this text. The examiner felt there's something wrong with this text. So it's two of us. However, people from Sydney School of Genre felt it was a perfect text. So we've got 2-1, right? Sydney Genre School says it's a great text. Anya says it's not that, it could have been done better. And the examiner of this text said it's not that good either. So let's read and think. One night I was lying down in bed and I fell asleep. When I woke up, I was not in my bed anymore. I wasn't even in my room anymore. I was in a little wooden box. It was so small. I could move only around a little bit, but I couldn't stand up. I looked around for a gap or a door, but I couldn't find one. There were nails sticking out of the bottom, so I had to be careful where I stepped. I rammed the side, trying to get it open, but it didn't work. I stopped for a while. Should be a punctuation here. I stopped for a while and I noticed something weird. I am a bit claustrophobic, but I didn't feel sick. Then I sat down on a nail and it didn't hurt. I woke up. It was just a dream. Ayu, you have a very indifferent face. Aussie, you looking at this text thinking, what the heck? Nana is looking like, what the heck? Emma is not looking at all, just wondering, like, what is this about? It's exactly
Yeah.
my as well.
Yeah, well, actually, at the start, I was hooked because the text started so well. Because, well, the text captivated me. Anya, when I woke up, I was not in my bed anymore. Blah blah blah. Then, toward at the end of the text, why is it just this? So I think, uh, yeah.
Okay, so
So.
on the
Uh,
basis of everything I taught you, we're not going to do analysis by stages and, disturbance, dialogue. We're not going to do that. We're going to do sort of top-down analysis. What made you think that, what do you think is missing here? What went wrong?
There is, I don't know, maybe there is no development, or there is no something that I can take from this one, except that, oh, this is just a dream.
It's a flat text, right? It ends
Yeah,
flat.
it's a flat.
It's called
Okay,
false
flat.
flat.
Yes.
Like, so what's missing really? Every text should communicate something to take away, right?
Yeah.
Whereas this one, the message is kind of like, we don't know what the author wanted to communicate. I wanted to say that either I teach you well or I am dumb. It took me long time to actually reach this conclusion. You just got it like that, right? It took me a long time. I always knew it falls flat, but I didn't really, so it is about communicating communicating some sort of take home message, right? And none of us knows at this very moment, why the heck did this person write this text? And when you don't know why you write this text, you write like this. So, before we go to the next text, can you think, what does the so this guy didn't know why he wrote the text, right? And it fell flat. What conclusion do you draw from it for your own experience as a teacher?
I think it is. It is. I'm teaching an integrated reading and writing, Anya, at my campus, and 2 weeks ago, when I try to communicate with my students, whenever you are going to write something, you need to think of your readers. After, of course, after I joined our discussions workshops maybe 2 weeks ago, and then I want my students to think what you can give to the readers, what the readers will get from after reading your text, and then they uh, the students that told me that it was hard to think about something that the readers can get from after reading their text, and then when they submit their text and I read their text. Well, there is a little bit improvements. The students try to insert or to put some morals in their text, although well, their text is not that engaging. So maybe it takes them. It takes process, and also it takes time for us as the teacher, yeah, to enable enable our students to write well, because I think when we want to write, or when we want to write some good text that the readers can get something from our text, it is quite difficult.
Right. So So we will obviously have to, so that will be going to this detail. We'll do it on the 2nd or something of December, right? So in 2 weeks' time when I come back from Vietnam. But at this very moment, I think what you have achieved is very good, because sometimes we look for the recipe, but what we don't understand that the top down, by communicating to your students that they write to someone else, for someone else, I think you've achieved more than most of linguistic descriptors could achieve, right? Because now the student is thinking, which means adopts a reflective position to their own text. That's more, because of course it will take time to produce better and better texts, but just understanding that they don't write just for you, but they write for the audience, that's actually triggering a reflective attitude, and that's something. Oh, I'm not going to write that, because I'll just show you a little trick here. I'm not, just pedagogically, I'm not sure if I should do it now or not. I will. So the linguists from that, can argue and whatever. So it's a text. It could scare us, right? It could also make us laugh. I think more or less that person who wrote this text didn't know what they wanted to achieve with this text. Let's assume, because for me it's easier, and I think for this text it's easier, to assume that this text should make you laugh. Look, if you are aware of it, then once you know in your brain, the ending should be such that it would make me laugh. Now, look at the little trick we could do to fix it. So I stopped for a while and I noticed something weird. I'm a bit claustrophobic, but I didn't feel sick. Then I sat down on a nail and I woke up. It was just a dream. Then I sat down. You can feel it. Someone sat down on the nail, and they woke up. How many times we had dreams like this that, it's horrible, horrible, and then something happens and you just wake up. Oh, so just by using this experience, then I sat down on a nail, and obviously when you sit down on the nail, it will make you wake up, right? But what happened, the student put this thing here and overdid too much. It was too much. We didn't need that anymore. This was doing the job perfectly well. Oh, pardon me, I cannot make it green. Just want to make it green. The fact that he was claustrophobic and didn't feel sick, that was already surprising. And because it's a short text, you don't want too many disturbances, right? Because you will not have enough in the text. It's just too short. You cannot put 300 disturbed narrative, yes, but this is short. So I didn't feel so. I'm a bit claustrophobic, but I didn't feel sick. Right. Then I sat down on the nail, and you feel the pain, right? You feel the pain of sitting on the nail. Everybody's feeling the pain of sitting in a nail. Well, that would certainly make you wake up. And that's fun, yeah. I'm not necessarily saying that this is stand-up comedy, but it is funny now, to have a dream that you sit down on the nail, surely you would wake up. And instantly, the text is lifted, in my view. Look at another text, similar problem. It's also from this national test, right? National exam. So here, again, I think it's a badly constructed text. The examiner thinks it's a badly constructed text, but the linguist think it's a good text. Now, the reason why the linguists felt this one was a good text, because structurally, in terms of genre, it's a good text. But the text is not about grammar and words. The text is about communication. So a linguist from Genre School of Sydney can say it's a good text. Now, if every text has the structure right, 90% of Australian students would get high distinction. But the text is not about getting the structure right. Speaking grammatically doesn't make you a good communicator. It just makes you a good grammar user. You still could be stupid. You still could be a bad communicator. Now, we have plenty of Australians, including me, who make mistakes in English, but are excellent when it comes to publishing, when it comes to supervising doctoral students, when it comes to lecturing. Grammar alone it's just one indicator. It's not everything. Certainly, when you don't get any words right, or any grammar right, then that will prevent you from being a good communicator. But just getting the structure right, it doesn't make you actually a good narrator or a good communicator. So here, yes, the structure was correct. I mean, in terms of the linguistic rules. But the text wasn't doing anything, was falling flat. It wasn't interesting, indicating that that particular student didn't understand what the text is. The text is a vehicle to relate to another human being. That's why you say hello. You are with your husband you wake up in the morning, whether it's your husband next to you or your child. The first thing you do is you wake up and you say, "Oh, hello." Right? Why? You open your mouth to relate to the human being. You do not say, "The plants are not watered." Right. So a text is a vehicle for us to relate to another human being, to affect them. And when you get the structure right, but you do not relate, you don't affect the other person, you didn't get the meaning of what text is about. That's why this text, as it was not a good text. Here we have similar thing. So here it is. So again, the linguists think that this is a great text. Now they should be saying it has a good structure. They cannot call this text as a good text. And that's the problem I have. And that's what I was writing in my publication, right? I didn't actually analyze this particular text. I just mentioned it a little bit towards the end. But okay, so here it is. Zip, it's the name of a boy. Zip is the new kid at my school. He is a Zordian. Zordian, just someone coming from another planet, right? He is a Zordian from Zord. So it starts again, IU, right? Starts interesting. Aussie as well. Like when you read, you engage in it. You go, yeah, science fiction. Good. I can't believe what these kids write, to tell you the truth. It's great. He even has his own spaceship parked on the oval. Okay, it's huge. So that's a dialogue, right? So what's the problem in the beginning? The problem is what? What's the disturbance? Disturbance is the Zordian, like, oh my God. It's not necessarily negative here. So we have an example when disturbance doesn't have to be negative, but it's out of this planet, right? Literally. So it's something new, changes the emotion. We go like, what? Zordian? All right. So it's huge. Me and Zip are best friends because we both like swimming and soccer. Zip invited me to his spaceship. It's so cool. He has PS 2000, I don't know what it is. I'm a girl, so I don't know what it is. And a TV that's about 50 times bigger than my one, and a food system that you say bacon into it and bacon comes out. After that, I invited Zip to my house. It must look ancient to him, but he wasn't, should be not bad. And he wasn't impressed by the TV that's 50 times smaller than his, my PS3, don't know what it is, and mom's state-of-the-art kitchen. So I decided we both like swimming, so we went down to the lake. He asked, "How deep is it?" I didn't know, so I said, "I don't know." So he dived down to the bottom. I timed him. He was down there for 20 minutes. When he surfaced, he said, "It's 40 kilometers." So that is an accurate recount of my 2 days with Zip. I'm reading this thinking, who needed that last sentence? Right? It is, so I've been aware of this particular text for a few years before I actually addressed it one way or another somewhere. But do you agree that the ending is weird?
Yes,
There is
yes,
a,
I do agree.
there
Yeah.
is a cohesion problem, something like from nowhere. I mean, where's this recount coming from? Like, it's just a new thing. Right at the end, there's this, accurate recount. You go like, who asked you to produce a recount? Did the examiner ask you to? We just look at it and we think like, is it a part of the text? So, so again, I think what the child who wrote it was thinking, probably, I don't know, I speculate. You wanted a recount? I give you a recount.
Yes, I think maybe it is his reason.
But 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 the examiner didn't like it. So we have here a pedagogic issue, right? So I'm not going to go into it at this very second, but what would have been better if if a student who wrote it would have said, "What do you have any other suggestion how it would be better to finish this text?" I've got some ideas myself. I can't remember exactly how I. Any idea how you could finish the text to make it a little bit more decent? Well, I wrote something. I can't remember what I wrote in my own notes when I was assessing this text, but something to the effect like, "Oh well, that's what you expect when you spend a day with an alien." And that's what happens when you spend a day with an alien, right? Something like that. So it's kind of like a bit humorous, a little bit, just literally closes it and comes back to the beginning, knowing for us that the guy was an alien. That was the problem in the text. That was the, how we have this thing here. Even though the text has smaller disturbances, the key disturbance is the most important. And here, the key disturbance was in this text that he was a Zordian from somewhere else. It was out of ordinary. So, in the resolution and in the moral, in the resolution, he might have come back to it because the guy was staying, could go down in the lake 40 kilometers. But in the moral, you really want to have something that refers back to the disturbance, to the beginning of the text, right? And the beginning was he was a Zordian, so just finish and say, well, what do you expect? That was my day with an alien, something like this. It's what did I, something like, well, that was a day with an alien or something to this effect. So by referring back to the fact that the guy was an alien, then it actually sums it up quite nicely. Now, so it's very good to start with. So coming back to Ossi's question before we move to the next part. I hope we have time. I just want to spend another half an hour, Lala. Is it okay?
Yes, please.
Okay. So if your students are thinking, they want to communicate a message. So then take them through the thing like, what what problem, what challenge will help them um, make that message evident. So think the rain and hail, right, in your head, right? Because you think always of some practical example like the text about the football game. But with your students, you know that they have to, that the text is to affect somehow, to communicate a message that is affecting somehow the audience, right? Positive, negative, make them laugh, make them scared, make them think that they learned some moral lesson, right? So instead of talking about narrative, anecdote or something, we're now talking about affecting, communicating to the audience, affecting the audience, identify the emotion. How do they feel after they've read your text? They laughed, they got scared, they felt that they learned a lesson, they feel elated, love Indonesia, right? Something patriotic, I want them to feel that there is something worthwhile about my country, there's something worthwhile about the place where I live. It's lovely to have a family. I want them to feel appreciation for the family, something really generic. And then you can focus them. So, okay, so what challenge can we address, can we point out, or can we highlight to make this emotion of elation, or the emotion of patriotism, or emotion of appreciation of the family, that can make them feel that, right? So saving for winter was a hardworking ant as contrasted with a lazy grasshopper, right? Football game, which is, what was it? Appreciating that not all good things come without challenge. So what challenge? How will we, right? So organize your text always around those points of disturbance, right? So what disturbance can, or what challenge can we can focus on to make the point of the text be experienced, be felt, right? And then maybe your students will want to have a few of those challenges, like in the football story: rain, uh, bad seat allocation, hail, rowdy and loud, whatever, public, right? Total nuisance. Despite of it, was all good. Despite of it was good. So, so these are the sort of things. Is it easy? Well, you can make it easier if you do it with a shorter text before you build with a longer text, I guess. I wasn't teaching this, so this is where Lala comes, or even Lukman. We've lost Lukman. I did look a little bit at Lala's text, but I can't remember them recently because Lukman just submitted his thesis, and I looked at Lukman's students' thesis. I think students' work. I think they had this structure most of the time. They were very well presented, really good text. I was really impressed, and I compared the text after the 16 weeks of a semester, and so pre-test and post-test, and completely different texts, just completely different. So I was impressed with that. So maybe just one key disturbance, and then maybe you can, to make the point stronger, then you can have several challenges. I'm not very good in creativity of this kind. I used to be, but I changed my focus, my professional focus. So, but yes, so you can see how you can read texts with students, analyze them, and on the basis of the analysis, they learn how text communicate the message. Some of them, like the fable with one problem, which is with one contrast, which is the hardworking ant, and then we find out with the resolution and the moral why the ant was hardworking in summer, working hard in summer, right? So just one problem, summer, and contrasted with the hardworking ant. And sometimes we can have a text which pounds our head with ongoing challenges, the rain, the hail, the horrible seat allocation. What else can go wrong, right? Everything is going wrong. So there are several points in the text which indicate or highlight challenges. So either one challenge, which is the contrast of a summer and the hardworking end, or several challenges, just to illuminate the point of the story. So so that I wanted to show you something else. And do I tell you why? So when things go wrong, I showed you. I wanted you to look at the devices of the text. Okay, so we have two ways of working with the system of aesthetics. I just have to say it for the record. Nobody of you will remember what I just said, but because it's recorded and I don't know. Anyway, Lala understands. I don't know. Anyway, I just said that. We have two methods for working with the aesthetics, but we would use the aesthetics system now to look at how we've interpreted the text and to examine the devices of the text. Now, do you remember in the publication that I submitted, in the text that I submitted for publication, I I did a aesthetic analysis of one of the texts, of the one with purple shoes. Remember that one? I did aesthetic analysis. So we will do the same with the football text. Okay. Let's see how we get. So, when you read that paper, when you read this paper, I introduced the concept of aesthetic analysis of a text. Now, obviously, we can do lots of things with it, and we only have very little time today. In order not to die, we'll just introduce it a little bit. So there are specific categories that neuroscientists identified as processes that your brain, my brain, uses when looking at the world. So Professor Ramachandran, I think from UCLA, University of California in Los Angeles, he and another scholar, Hirstein, identified those categories, those aesthetic categories. They, interestingly, use them to discuss how these categories show themselves in the way how you experience paintings or experience statues, so objects of art. But a painting is nothing else but the text. Would you agree? For whom is the painting painting? Painter painting. So you're not as strong maybe on paintings because I forgot you are from Muslim culture. Do you paint faces? Do you have, okay, are you allowed to paint your wife or your dog? Or I don't
Yes.
know. You are?
Yes, Ajay.
Yes.
Well, anyway, I'm just talking from the Western perspective of Western culture. You can translate it to your own. So painting is not, it's a different way of communicating with the audience, isn't it? So you can have a painting of say, like I have here in my house here, you can have a painting of a street, for example. What is it? It's communicating a mood. It's not a photography, right? It's actually using particular strategies in order to make you see something that maybe you would miss otherwise, right? So we had other painters, for example, some painters use different techniques in order to illuminate or highlight specific aspect of reality, or maybe not of reality, of imagination, but all of it is to evoke in you something, so that it's for the audience, right? So so when I listened to Ramachandran, I thought, oh my God, if these categories are used for painting and for art, then an art is like a text. Then they could be useful also for text analysis. So I'm not sure whether you can remember or you can open for yourselves this football text. I will open it on my computer. I just have to see where I have it. Okay. So there are particular categories, and you can actually follow them up with your students as well when you analyze text. It's very useful. It's excellent for vocabulary learning, totally excellent for extending child's vocabulary. It's fantastic. So first of all, isolation is about modality of the text. So you can it's not necessarily about genre, but you can say, is it a painting, is it a photography, is it a so here I wrote that it is basically a protagonist narrating her own or his own her own story, making it a personal account of her experiences. That was the case with the Purple Boots, but I think it's also the case in the football game story, isn't it? It's a personal account of her experiences, isn't it? Even though it is written to communicate to the audience, obviously, but it's a narrative communicating the protagonist's own experiences of that event, of attending a football game. We agree? So that's what the concept of isolation is about. What kind of modalities? Is it a painting? It is yeah. Now, the category of peak shift. That's something that maybe you can actually read up a little bit in that paper of mine. But the category of peak shift. Now, there's a very simple way for students to show how I work with these concepts. I will show you, but this is I'm just to work with you. I'm using the text that I have in my publication. So, which element peak shift is? Lala, which one was with the dots on the? It doesn't matter. On the beak, I don't know. Anyway, so peak shift is about which element is highlighted in the story. So in the Purple Boots, the Purple Boots text or narrative started with the Purple Boots, right? The Purple Boots were the key. So the text in my publication, the text of a student that I analyzed in my publication was about the Purple Boots. The Purple Boots were there. They belonged to the grandmother. The protagonist always wanted to have these purple boots. And then comes the problem. But not in this way. Grandma died. So yes, she got the purple boots. But she didn't want those purple boots, when grandma dies, because she wanted them before she dies. And so that death of grandma, yes, caused her to inherit those purple boots, but it was kind of not the way she wanted to come into the possession of the boots. So the purple boots here, what would you choose as the highlighted element? The story begins with what? What's highlight, right? So I think that peak shift is usually about the highlighted element. The text begins with it. Like when you watch a movie and it's a criminal movie because the music, its music is sort of grim, the colors are usually gray, and then within a minute someone dies. Or you are introduced to some horribly looking person or something. So every genre of the movie begins with this peak shift. So it's a movie, for example. So its modality would be a movie, right? The peak shift would be what's that highlighted element in the crime story. It's usually the darkness of the context. When I'm very good at it because I'm in my own home in Canberra, not in Darwin. So I have there in my home, I have this huge television, and sometimes I watch YouTube free movies on YouTube. So because I know, but for you it's normal thing probably. I haven't watched movies in 30 years. I hate movies. So, but recently when I get bored and I have this huge screen, yeah, I succumb to that. So a spy movie is different, right? A spy movie has a different peak shift. It will not have this darkness, horrible, grim movie. There will be something else, like maybe masculinity or some sort of, different accents there. Here, in this story, what do you think is the highlighted element?
The loss of the grandmother.
Oh, no, Lala, don't talk.
Come on. Sorry, I forgot.
Lala, you are here to learn. I'm talking to the other experts.
Okay.
You have never been. Actually, Lala, this is what, just to let you know, when you feel that this is way over your head, this method, Lala has never been this deeply engaged in the method, because one or two tricks of this method, and especially not training students linguistically, like to become linguists, made so much difference. Right? So much difference. You engage students' reflection as opposed to knowledge of linguistics, right? And then, because people know a lot. When we treat students as stupid, as like, they have nothing. They come to us. When we see our students, they're 18. Legally, they can have babies, right? They're not stupid. So if we allow them to dig into themselves and tell us what they know and have a discussion, so a lot is coming out. But when we always just hit them with more and more knowledge, we erase their brain and replace it with 2 or 3 linguistic categories. Anyway, so Lala didn't have much of that training, in fact, because a lot of it I developed recently. A lot of it I didn't know back then. So as I explained to you in the beginning of our meeting today, it's still growing. We're still learning about the power and the meaning of this model. All right, so what's the highlighted element in this text? I have given you a clue. Remember how I started? How I said that when you go to the movies to watch a movie, in order for you to be prepared, right at the start, an element is highlighted. So you know what to expect, whether it will be a spy movie, whether it will be a comedy, whether it will be a romance movie, right? Something. So it's called a peak shift. It's highlighting something so that everything else in the text belongs to that. It's not simple to know it, but I think you should know by now. Nana, what is it? What's highlighted?
I have no idea. What is that?
Okay, so it's hard. It's hard to. Emma, any ideas?
I've lost my connection before, Anya, so
Okay, that's okay.
I haven't
Well,
think about it.
so in the purple boots story, the purple boots were highlighted and everything referred back. In the crime story, the story begins with the grim, with the grim music, gray colors, and usually death happening right at the beginning, right? So how does this? So what's the highlighted element in our text? How does the text start with what element? It begins with enthusiasm for the game and for the um, football team, right? I'll just read it to you how it starts. Right, highlighted is what? Sue and I left house and headed for the tram that's on Sydney Road. We were both psyched up because the magpies, not pies, it's called magpies, were to play the Dockers, right? So it's the game is highlighted, right? I think the game. So Sue and I left the house. So it's them being psyched up, right? It's the game and them being psyched up to go to the game, right? To see it live. That's the highlighted element, right? Them going to the game and approaching the trip with enthusiasm and eagerness. That's the highlighted element, and the story begins with this, right? Does the story begin with that? Yeah. The narrative about the football game begins with the protagonist saying she and her friend Sue are psyched up and geared up to go to the game, right? Nothing matters, only the game, right? So that's what they wanted from the day, and that's highlighted. But notice that very quickly what we have here, contrast. I will remove the thing from the other text. Do we have a contrast? So we have enthusiasm for attending the game is contrasted with what?
With the situations, with the obstacles.
That's right, with
Yeah.
the obstacles. Obstacles such as cold weather, the rain, hail, you name it, audience, loud audience, unpleasant
Stuff.
stuff. Exactly. Do you see how nice? And now when you think, how am I going to help my students? Okay, so if the first method with the structure is not clear to them, let's start with this, right? What will we highlight? So what will we do? Will we do the movie? Will we do the narrative? Will we do a story? Will we do a humorous thing? What will we write? Okay, and then we'll go like, okay, so what will we highlight? Movie starts with ooh, scary movie starts with something else, so with a contrast. So the highlight is enthusiasm. Contrast is now obstacles. Now with students, when you analyze text, what you do is you identify those groups of contrast. So we will not have time today, but I would like you to do it as your homework. Which words indicate enthusiasm? Which words communicate challenges? And this is how your students learn how to communicate challenges. The challenge is not the word rain. I'll show you how the author communicated challenges. She says, She says, we were there at the tram stop, destined for the stadium, wrapped up in our magpie's clothing in 6-degree weather. Right? She didn't say that the challenge was the cold. She says in 6-degree weather, a detailed temperature was given. Right? So that's one way to, it's one literary device to make a person who is reading feel cold. If I tell you that it's cold, you go like, oh, okay, unpleasant. But if I give you the temperature, you go, oh my God, right? So these are the sort of literary devices that I was talking about. So when we identify now the contrasting groups in terms of the expressions, it's not the word cold, it's in 6-degree weather. Another one was, she doesn't say it rained. She says, to add disappointment, the rain came, right? Completely different words. Now, as an ESL person, student, you would say, it was cold and it rained, but we went to the game. And that's how our students later on end up having very narrow, active vocabulary. They understand the words, but they can't use them because they were never actively taught those literary devices. But when we have now the task to identify the contrasting groups, the contrasting groups, right? So we have in 6-degree weather, or to add disappointment, the rain came, right? So, and then she reinforces it and she says, I mean a lot of rain, right? So a person is now learning how to talk about, or how to communicate feelings like this, not just by saying it's cold or it's raining, saying we were disappointed, the rain came, and I mean a lot of rain, right? So if you can actually do such an analysis yourselves, identifying these perceptual groups, that would be very interesting. And have the ones for enthusiasm. It wasn't like we looked forward to the game, right? We all speak like this, right? Because we are products of textbooks, English learning, right? But real people don't say, I'm looking forward to the game. Sometimes we do, but they said, and we were, we had all the gear on. We had the beanie, we had the scarf, we had the colors of the team, all of that. So these are the enthusiasm expressing words. And then we have the contrast. So perceptual grouping is very nice. Symmetry and balance. Now, this is where the analysis comes, that, the disturbance, dialogue, development, it comes really handy, because when you actually do this analysis of the football game, and you have, I'm not sure whether you have it, but I think I've sent it to Lala. I will resend the PowerPoint today again. You will see that the text is very nicely, if you recall, developed. It has 4 disturbances, and each disturbance has a dialogue. Each disturbance has a follow-up in terms of development. So what happened next, right? And then another problem happened. So it has quite well developed those sections. Those sections are very well developed, and it's many of them. It's not just one disturbance, but it's at least 4. And each disturbance has dialogue and development, dialogue and development. So this is quite a well structured full text. So I wrote it fully developed to engage the reader, right? There's a lot of information, a lot of feelings communicated. So this is what I have about the purple boots, but let's have a look whether we can agree with it. Perceptual problem solving. So problem is the rain, right? The rain, which is disturbing the entire or affecting the entire experience of watching the game. So is the text taking, so when in order for us to feel, right? So the author wants to, so I'll just write it down here. The author wants the reader to feel the challenge, not just be informed that it was difficult, right? So to this end, we the writer or the author um, um, engaged readers in the process of experiencing the weather challenges in more than one way. So first it was cold and the rain came. Then second, it was the seat allocation and the ugly stuff, right? Then third, we had hail. Then fourth, more rain after a short break. So the experience, we so the protagonist, so perceptual problem solving means how how well did the text communicate to us the problem and its solution, right? So that's the question. And and maybe not its solution and the moral, maybe something like this. Um, so it communicated very well. It didn't just inform us about the rain, but it showed us the rain and its effect on the girls from many perspectives. First, it was cold and raining. Then there was difficulty with seat allocation because you were in the open, which meant there was no shelter, which meant you would be sitting in the rain, right? And the person was not very, who was allocating seats was not very helpful. So the challenge to survive the game was communicated to us in more than one way, right? So we had four disturbances for us to see or for us to feel the effect of the rain or the effect on the rain in more than one way. So it wasn't just said, it rained, but we survived. The protagonist made us feel the rain and the cold and the consequences of it on their bodies and the little hope they had when the rain stopped and the disappointment because it restarted again. We felt the rain on our bodies and the cold as we were reading it, right? So it was very well presented in the story, right? We experienced the challenge of the rain in more than one way. Now, I don't remember what's generic viewpoints, so I have to read. Through the foregrounding of the books, the story theme, through the foregrounding of the girls' enthusiasm. Let's see what it says. Right. So basically what we have here the focusing element of the story, or like here we said, the highlighted element was not the boats, highlights, subject of enthusiasm. So this was highlighted in the peak shift, right? So here, generic viewpoint, so this is how you check whether you got your story right? Because we're just looking whether this enthusiasm was really a highlighted element, was really the point against which and everything else to which everything else can be related. And it is, because the challenges don't have any meaning per se. They acquire meaning in relation to the enthusiasm for the game. And together, it creates the moral, right? Enthusiasm won, right? Every student who is doing PhD has ambition and has challenges. Will the ambition win, or will the challenges win? Right? You can succumb to challenges and not finish. And the reason why when you graduate, everybody claps, especially when you finish your PhD, because we all know how hard it is. When someone does ice skating or does something athletic, which is unusual, we clap, not because we like the performance. Yeah, we like the performance, but you do it. Right? It's impossible. And it's not just impossible because the dance or the skill is difficult. Everything you sacrifice to that. Right? I mean, someone who lives with me knows exactly what it means. When I work with my students intensively, I don't exercise. So sometimes I'm like that, and sometimes I'm like that. My weight shifts. Because when I don't exercise and when I have a lot of work, sometimes I eat and I don't exercise. I eat because I'm stressed and I don't exercise. I put on weight. But when normality comes to my life, I'm fine. I'm 50 some kilograms, right? So, because the ambition wins and the challenges are just put up with. Right? Life is hard. Sometimes you really have to sacrifice some things to get the goal. So here, generic point. So that highlighted element continues through the story to be the thing that carries the story, which means that the way we interpreted the moral and interpreted the story is correct, because continuously the ambition or the enthusiasm for the game keeps being the focal point of the story. It's the enthusiasm that makes us understand why the rain was a challenge, but why the overcoming of the rain as a challenge was important. Why the overcoming of the rain was important, right? You get it? Overcoming the obstacle was important in order for the goal to win, right? So we as humans, I don't know about gorillas or orangutans, but our brain is complex, can hold a lot of information, and we value, as a species, we value long-term goals. Marriage that lasts 50 years. Children, raising of children, that you don't throw out your child when they're 5 years old. We value when you raise your child and keep the child at home so that they feel safe and have time to grow up. Right? We value long-term goals as humanity, as a species, right? Doesn't matter what country you were born, what religion, we value. And when we see some people who don't have long-term goal, we watch them whether how because there are some tribes in this on this planet of people that have short-term goals, or seem to us to have short-term goals. And sometimes when we have short-term goals, our existence might be too shaky. Oh, I will hit you. Yeah, but if you hit me and if we hit each other, we kill each other, there is no humanity anymore. I kill you, you kill me, all right. And then right, so we value long-term goals, not short. So the generic viewpoint, so by foregrounding the goal, which is the enthusiasm for the team and for the game, right, it was the pivotal. So the author directed our attention on that, and as a result we interpreted everything in relation to this goal, right? So even though, look at how emotional it is, even though we felt for the girls, right, because it was raining, it was cold, we felt for the girls, but we understood why they did that, because we understood the goal and we could relate to the goal. So this is all emotional. We were relating to the goal that the girls set up for themselves. We were relating to their emotions. Sure, I wouldn't go to a football game, but I would sit for 2 months. Lala knows. Wahid came to finish his PhD because he couldn't. I couldn't edit it without him. We sat for a month at least daily for 10, 12 hours without moving to edit the thesis, right? And you can sit there and work, and we had to reread articles and everything. We just said the goal was important, right? So and all that, and now you feel for me because you know how hard it is, but you also can relate to the goal, right? So I cannot relate to the football game, but I can relate to some other goals, right? So here with a generic viewpoint was that highlighted element, and that highlighted element, which is the goal of the girls, enabled us to actually interpret all the challenges in relation to it. So it was well structured. The generic viewpoint, which is the goal of the girls, was continuously like a beacon, like what do they call it? A lantern in the on the ocean, like on the coast you have those lanterns that shine the light for ships to not to get lost. So it continuously was there, that viewpoint, that generic viewpoint, for us to relate the story to that. Through that generic viewpoint, we were continuously understanding the meaning of those challenges. Metaphor. What was the metaphor? I think I've solved it for myself. You see, I also have to think here. So in terms of metaphor, what was from the, so this is the boots in that purple star, the boots symbolized a connection with the grandma. They represented the protagonist yearning for the grandmother. So what was the metaphor here? Was there a metaphor in this text? Did something stand for something? What was there a text? Was in this text something, a metaphor? I think in order for us not to sit here long, and because you have not enough experience with those categories, I think the story finishes with the pleasure was worth the effort. I think the whole text was a metaphor, right? So I think that the goal was a metaphor, I mean, I think the rain, and the cold were the metaphor for the obstacles. or challenges we encounter when at times when striving for our own goals, right? I think that's what it is. The obstacles or the challenges were the metaphors for what we sometimes encounter when we want to achieve something, right? So life is not easy. Sometimes when you want to achieve something, you have to make uh, selections, make choices, and continue with those, right? Despite whatever happens. So I think there is a metaphor here. Now, look, I am no artist. I cannot tell you what's the value of these things in a metaphor or whatever. But I think that um, I probably in a year's time or 2 years' time, I'll be talking about these aesthetic categories much nicer than I'm talking today because, I'm by myself doing this model a little bit with Lala and Lukman. This is a new model. We don't have the entire Sydney school of 70 people working on the approach, not yet at least. But I think that these categories are very helpful. They allow us to return to the text and now in more detail to analyze whether our analysis was correct or not. And now we can do it in more detail, whereby we have to make decisions like about modality, about the highlighted element. It was difficult. We didn't, even though I was trying to point you to what the highlighted element was, which is the peak shift, it was difficult for you, not enough experience yet. But I think it opened also the discussion for us to discuss to analyze other genres, how they are structured, like movies, whether a horror movie or crime movie or a romance movie or a comedy. They will have an element they highlight differently. So right from the start, uh, audience knows what kind of movie they will be watching, right? So you can, when you watch movies again, you can actually now we looked at the contrasts. And remember when I asked ChatGPT to identify contrasts in this text? I'll come back to that file for 1 second and I'll show, and you can actually study that file and see whether it will help you, right? So you can copy and paste the story to the tag to ChatGPT and then ask, what are the contrasts? Can you identify the words or the expressions that belong to the enthusiasm? Can you identify in this text words or expressions that communicate challenges? Then you can ask ChatGPT, why do you think this word is relevant for this? Why do you think this other, why do they say the rain is coming? Why do they use the word we sighed or something? You can ask any question and ChatGPT will tell you. It's a machine and it's programmed to serve you. Ask any questions. So while I ask you to identify those perceptual groups, you can do it by hand with students, definitely. But your students, when they are at home and they feel lost, they can ask the computer and it will tell them. And they can ask questions about each perceptual group, about each word. Remember how in the past I showed you, maybe you don't remember, but I did ask ChatGPT why the fable about the ant and the grasshopper begin with the word in a field. And it gave me 6 reasons. Now, it took me a bit of a time to think about it, and I had my own answer. But it was interesting. When I asked ChatGPT, it told me, right? So it was great. I'm not saying ChatGPT is 100% right, but I'll tell you one thing, it's better than to be on your own. I call ChatGPT a great social equalizer because it helps you. It is a tutor. Um, it helps us as teachers because sometimes we too are limited, so we can ask it questions. So in that file that Lala gave you last week, I asked ChatGPT to summarize the football story. And it summarized it. then I asked it to summarize in more abstract terms. Now, today, I don't have more time to explain to you what I did with it. We might leave it for another day. But what I did, I used the detailed summary and then the abstract summary in order to produce a brief summary. And here it is. I'm just going to put it a little bit on another page so you can see it as one. Still can't see it as one. All right. Now, you could be surprised why my summary starts with the moral. Right? Are you surprised? Oh, I can't surprise you. I wonder what will happen. Delete cell, delete row. Yes. Okay. So, as I told you, these categories like focus, disturbance, all of them are elements of the text. The text doesn't have to start with the focus. It can start with the focus. It can start with a disturbance. It can start with a development. My husband wrote an abstract for his book chapter, and it started with a development. In this chapter, I will do this and this and this and this. So that's a development. And then he gave us the context. Why the heck he's doing this, right? So he then produced the focus and disturbance. But first he said, that's what I will do. Now, later on, he says, when I analyzed his abstract in public, as an example, he then said, oh, he could have written it better. So he didn't like later on the fact that he started with the development, but it's possible. And many people start abstracts with the development. In this chapter, I will do this, this, and this. Why? Because this is the context and this is the problem and this is what I think, and I expect this, which is the resolution. And anyway, so these are elements of the text, but they don't confine us to specific sequence. Now, sometimes it's good to start with the moral, which is what this text is all about, right? What do you expect in this text? When will we start with the moral? When you write a book review, you don't say, in the story, Sue and her girlfriend went to the food. This is not how you start the book review. You want parents. So, for example, it's a children's story. You want parents to know what values are presented in that story, right? So you communicate the moral first. This story is about the universal idea that not everything comes to us easy. Sometimes we have to put up with challenges in order to reach our goals, right? So you put it right in the first sentence so that the parent knows, okay, so this is what this book is about. Lovely, I like that value, right? And then the parent can read, okay, so how did the story do that? So it can read the focus, disturbance, and everything, but at least the parent is already prepared that that's what this text will communicate. So book reviews, now the way how book reviews are written by the proponents of Sydney Genre School is bad. I'm not saying all of them, but I've seen a workshop that they were teaching, and I can show you one day if we ever have time for sort of detail like this. But the book review never started with the values, never started with the moral, because they have their structure. And unfortunately, sometimes it's not how it works. Life is not necessarily just a line. Anyway, so this is the moral. So basically, the narrative underscores. This one I got from. So I remember I had two summaries. One long summary by ChatGPT and one short one about values only, so abstract terms. So this one I got from the abstract one. The narrative underscores and look at this, how I will read it to you as a whole, and you will see whether it makes sense. So the narrative underscores the universal idea that the essence of pleasure often lies in overcoming hardships and fully immersing oneself in the experience, regardless of the obstacles encountered. The story centered around the protagonist's journey to support their beloved sport team, an endeavor marred by challenging weather conditions and logistical difficulties. The story encapsulates the experience of resilience and enduring passion in the face of adversity. Despite the inclement weather, the narrator and Sue remain engaged, eventually purchasing disposable raincoats during the second quarter. The noisy group of supporters around them continues to be a nuisance throughout the match. Now you can do it a bit better, I think. The game itself is enjoyable with the Magpies leading for the most time. After the game, which they concluded with pride in their team, the narrator and Sue make their way back home, exhausted and soaked, longing for the comfort of hot shower. So I think I'll have to work a little bit on this summary, but basically we have a moral. Then we have what is at the center, which is the highlighted element. What did we call here? The peak shift, right? So the peak shift is here. So, and here is the problem, right? So, and so centered on the protagonist's journey to support the beloved team. And now this is comma. You see comma here. And then I described, so they have this beloved team, but supporting them here in this story is an endeavor marred by challenging weather conditions and logistical difficulties, like the seats, right? So this would be the disturbance. The dialogue is basically a perspective on the disturbance. So the story is about the experience of resilience and enduring passion in the face of adversity, right? So it's a disturbance is about the adversity. So it feels like, yes, there is an adversity, but the story really is about the enduring passion and resilience. And then you can basically say, so what happened in the story? So despite the weather, they did this and that. And then you can say, so what happened? The game was enjoyable and the team won. And after the game, everybody went home happy. And that's it. So you can do it with your students too. You can actually first ask them to produce the summary using this sort of structure. But then you can go to ChatGPT and ask ChatGPT to produce the summary and then see how you can make it better. And that way your students can actually learn different ways of writing, different expressions, and so on. So enrich the way in which they express themselves. Now, how do you assess it? Well, there are, you have to see that there's one thing is the learning as a learning process, and the other thing is the exam. So they're two different things. You cannot assess the learning process. You should assess the outcome of the process, right? So you have maybe different assessments, and we can talk about it another time. But it seems to me that effectively, increasingly, there will become the room will open for things like exams where students can actually have to perform in writing or in speaking, but in an enclosed space, so that they don't have access to ChatGPT. They don't have, you can actually do that. But I think you can also assess them so that would be the final and the biggest percentage of the grade. But you can also assess them in the process of learning, on how they actually engage in the learning process itself, even with ChatGPT. Are they doing these things? Because sometimes students don't do, even if you give them the answer, they will not read it, right? So there is assessment that actually is about assessing the product of learning, which is the final one, but maybe one or two assessments, small ones, worth little, but still on the process. to check whether they actually are engaging in learning, right? So then they can use ChatGPT, and you want to see whether they are using, whether they can. So you assess the process, and then at the end, the largest percentage you give to the outcome where they have actually an exam on different skills. It's very easy. I mean, just because someone gave us a perfect tutor, there's no need to now say, oh, we don't want ChatGPT, it's going to destroy our teaching or something. You know, like in the past, I mean, obviously you all went through school and you remember when people were burning computers, when people were burning printers, when, you know, like there was always something wrong with the new technology. The issue is not to see solutions as problems. The issue is to work with solutions in order for them to work for us. Okay, so we've recorded the whole thing. So that will be for posterity. You could maybe even use it for your own class. I don't know. Anyway, any questions? And any questions? And I'll see you in 2 weeks. If Lala, that's what Lala decides.
Okay, in 2 weeks' time. Questions, everybody?
Well, actually, I wanted to ask you about the assessment when we decide to use ChatGPT in our learning process. But you have just answered that previously. So I've been hesitant, and I have been pondering whether to use ChatGPT in my writing class or not, because I know when the students ask ChatGPT to suggest improvements to the text they write by themselves, I know they are going to learn a lot, but I'm hesitant which one should be assessed, the first versions or the much better versions improved by ChatGPT.
Once they write the text, so this is when we use ChatGPT. Okay, so this is the assessing the process, not assessing the final outcome. Okay, of learning. So that is an exam, and I think that it should be enclosed and no access to computers, other whatever, right? But when you assess the process, so for example, students write the text and they ask ChatGPT for help, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I didn't teach you all this system for nothing. Ask the students to do the structural analysis of the text in terms of focus, disturbance, dialogue, resolution, right? All of those, right? They identify whether there's only one disturbance or many. Ask them to do that. Then ask them to tell you even if they talk about their own text. So they identify the structure of the text. They identify what the text is about, which is not to say that they went to the football game and it was raining and whatever. They have to identify the moral, right? The text is communicating this. Then ask them, go through the categories. I have just the aesthetic categories and do all the detail analysis. Is it a narrative protagonist talking about herself or about other people, whatever? What is it? What modality? Ask about the highlighted element. Ask about the contrast. Ask about the groups. Identify all the words, all the phrases that make up contrasting perceptual groups. Make them at the end write a summary in the way I was showing to you now. Make them do that. So the learning process is not just about writing a text. It's now about doing self-reflection using these tools of analysis. Now, they will hate you because you won the game this way, but they will learn a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So the examinations should be isolated, should be enclosed.
So it's
Maybe,
different.
yeah.
So I would have probably 3 assessment tasks. 2 of them altogether about 40%, so 20-20 or 15-15, so 15-15, and they are on the to submit, for example, such a, so they write the text and they do their analysis of the text, and as a result maybe they will correct the text, because sometimes after you've done the analysis, you actually, that helps you edit your own text and make it better. So something like that. So I would think of two small assessment pieces on the process of learning, and then the 60% or 70% assessment piece whereby they actually write a text or analyze a text in an exam context, or have a debate, or they have they speak something, or whatever, it's just whether it's spoken or written, up to you, but in a exam context.
Thank you. Thank you,
I
Aya.
will, I will think for the next time we meet what small assessment pieces I would suggest for your students to assess their learning engagement in their learning. So one of them would be what I just said. Yes, do all these reflections on, writing a text for the audience and so on, and also analyze using those tools. Maybe this could be two assessment tasks, or it could be one assessment task, which are just engaging all these systems I taught today. I don't know. I would have to think about it. One thing that I didn't talk about, because I didn't have time, but since you're talking about assessment, I might raise here. It is an ongoing problem in education that we ask students to do something. Can someone turn off something, because I can hear myself? It's there's such a thing like pedagogic task, right? Pedagogic task is difficult. Pedagogic task is something like write a text, just write the text, and the kid doesn't know what to write about. But why don't you ask your students to create a website, classroom website, and that website will maybe be may contain text. So it could be so website could be about our critical writing or our critical reading, whatever you're teaching, right? And in that website, students will talk about issues about that they want to write about, or the stories or issues that they want other people to read. So there could be movie reviews, book reviews, article reviews, issues reviews of, say, something pedagogical. For example, they saw something in schools, or the way they experience English teaching or something, so whatever. So basically, they have a website, and that website is for other people to actually read and comment on. So you can ask students from other classes or whatever to now and then peek into this website and maybe leave some comments or something, so that students feel pressure, and they are put also in a more authentic context that stimulates their ideas for writing. Because if you just say to the person, okay, so if I said to you now, let's play, and you would say, okay, let's play a game. Okay, so you agree and I agree, we'll play a game. And I say, you start. And you say, start how? Because you need rules, you need constriction. Right? I have to give you rules of the game so that you can play. Without rules, there's no game. And that's what happens when you ask your students to just write. Oh, just write something. And they go like, about what? There's no pressure on them. But if you say, if they have a website and they have people, and that website will stay, so you will not cancel them after the course. Next year or next semester, another group will be writing on it, and you have a collection of these amazing texts produced by students, right? With comments underneath it, constructive comments and so on. Now, and I'm not sure about the. So either the students themselves decide what genre they will choose. So whether it will be a review, or whether it will be a storytelling, or whether it will be writing about issues affecting their teaching, or issues affecting their community, whatever. You may, this is up to you to decide how you will construct the profile of the website. But when students write for other people authentically, then they feel the constraint, and it generates life. Constraint generates life, just like cells don't develop unless it's what they are in water, right? So even your baby, when your baby grows, it grows in water, because water puts pressure, and therefore the body this is just chemistry, right? Life, to build complex molecules, needed pressure, right? And that's why life emerged from water, because water created those required tensions. And the same is in pedagogy. When you say to children, just write, they go like, what about? And well, so these are sort of inauthentic so-called pedagogic situations. So I had in my PhD, I addressed it. So there was this woman, she was a professor, very famous professor in TESOL, Claire Cramsh from, us, I think also UCLA or something like that. Anyway, important institution. And she wrote the paper in the year 2000 in a book published by James Lantolf. She said she asked her ESL students in America to write a summary. And they did exactly what that kid in that state exam test did. You wanted a narrative, an accurate narrative. I just gave you, so, this was my narrative, right? And remember in that text we read today about the Zordian boy, the boy didn't know how to finish the student didn't know how to finish the text, so he said, oh, this is the accurate narrative of my 2 days with the Zordian, right? Just leave me alone, basically. That was the ending of his story, right? Because the student knew it was inauthentic and couldn't relate to his own narrative, so he just said, oh, I've written it, now let me go home, right? And the same happened with Claire Cramsh. What Claire Cramsh did, she asked her students to write a summary, but summary is not a summary. Summary could be a review. A summary could be you telling your friend says, how was the movie? And you say, oh, it was shit. That's a summary, right? Summary is not a summary. There are different types of summaries, depends on the context and so on. So the kids in her group, the students actually, in her university, didn't know what she wanted didn't understand. So instead of looking at herself, that she asked the students, she put the students in an inauthentic situation where they couldn't really exercise their agency because there was no purpose. She blamed them. She said that they were just lazy playing school games. And that's why their summaries were bad. She played the school game. They didn't. They just responded to it. She couldn't see it in herself because she comes from linguistics. She doesn't come from semiotics. She doesn't understand that the text emerges from tension, not from linguistic rules. Linguistic rules don't create. Linguistic rules describe something, but they don't create the text. The text emerges from the situation. And if the situation is, well, we have this beautiful website, we created the website, we have our own website, so it could be 10% of a first assessment would be ask your students. I did that in Cambodia. I asked them to produce their own website. So they had groups of 3, but you can have a class website or you can have groups of 3 create their own website where they actually generate their text. And to tell you the truth, I wanted to achieve so much. And I think in the questionnaire, when they wrote or commented on my teaching, most of them were just saying, oh, the best part was the bloody website. I'm thinking like, oh my God, I taught you the world. And all you talk is about pedestrian website, but you can create in 3 seconds nowadays. Anyway, they love that idea of having their own website where they can actually submit things for other people to see. I would probably prefer a major website for the classroom, and then have links on it to smaller to websites of, say, groups of 3 students, of groups of 3. So if I have 21 students, we'll have shared website for the class, and then 7 and links to 7 websites which are of those groups of 3. And yeah, so having a website which commits them to a particular ethos. So that was hard with my students. In Cambodia, we did that. So a website has to communicate a spirit. That was absolutely ungraspable for those students from Cambodia. And they weren't students. They were, after they finished the course with me, or that little subject with me, and they were basically teachers in secondary schools, right? So they weren't newcomers or just young people. They were actually teachers, soon to be. So they thought that the website was the website, but I said to them, you cannot have a banner about nothing. That banner screams a message to the audience. This website is about that, right? And they had to understand that. That was difficult, but they created most amazing banners. So, for example, one website was in one website, students decided to have stories about Cambodia. So they created a banner where this person throws in the air pages, leaves of pages, leaves of book, and wrote underneath, "Life is just a story," right? And in the air there are those pages of the book floating. Life is just stories. I mean, it's touching. I get goosebumps just thinking about it. So there was a lot of creativity in those students, but you had to make them aware that the website is not just a website. Website and the banner also communicate already the spirit of your website. Like if you sell fridges, your banner will not be about flowers. Your banner will be, introducing the website will be, you want a fridge? Come here. Right? And then you have 3,000 fridges with prices on it. So that's about the text. Yes, do create the text, but you as a teacher think about it. Did we offer them a framework which, like water, will put pressure on them so that it will give them purpose? Oh, we want to be read. We want to write articles on discoveries in neuroscience, right? So our website is all about neuroscience and stories about neuroscience. So now they have a orientation. Oh, this is about pedagogy. We want to talk about our views on what happens, how English should be taught, or our views what happens in schools and how we would improve it, or whatever, right? So so now they have a purpose. So their text will be about that. And now they're gonna think, and they have orientation and purpose, as opposed to just write a text. Nobody will read it. This is just to assess you. So this is a very disciplinary regime. Do that, I will assess you, and if you're bad, you will know. Right? So, yeah. Anyway, we've been here for 3.5 hours, I think. So for 3 hours. Friends, if you have any questions, note them down, because I'm losing my voice. So it was lovely talking to you. Lovely to see your faces. Lala, thank you for organizing this meeting.
Thank you very much, Anya.
Lala, so we will see you in Darwin shortly. So I'll see you on the 2nd of December, because I can't make it in the area.
Right. Thank you very much, Anya. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Anya.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.